I had a feeling that something was different with my wife Caroline. Not much, but enough for a man who had known her for 12 years and been married for 10. Caroline and I, Lars Ekman, has an average Scandinavian family with 2 children, 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. We live in our own house just outside the county capital, and both of us are working full-time. Caroline is in the city hall, and I am self-employed with a small consulting company with 1 employee. My wife and I met at an evening class to learn advanced use of Microsoft Excel and married 2 years later. Of course, just like most others, our marriage had ups and downs, but never any serious problems, at least not in my opinion. The first sign appeared about 1 month after our 10-year anniversary. It was her slightly decreasing interest in sex. Not that she refused me any sex, but had begun to suggest quickies instead of making love much more often than she used to do. The next slight visible sign was an increase in her clothing expenses. One further sign was her increasing nagging at me without any real reason. Caroline had always been out with her friends at least 2 evenings a week for different innocent matters such as aerobics, evening classes, bowling, and badminton, but only a couple of late evenings a year with the girls at some bar or restaurant when somebody in the gang wanted to celebrate something. I did my very best, but couldn't see any new or strange patterns in her evenings out. My employee Eric noted that I had problems with my marriage and told me that it was better to find out the truth than go around feeling as bad as I did. I told him that a private investigator could probably find out the truth, but it was impossible for me to hire some private investigator for 2 very simple reasons. The first, there wasn't any such available, at least not in the phone book, neither in our town nor in the whole county. The second, even if there had been one, I didn't have the money to have Caroline tailed for a very long time, but I promised to do my best to bring a stop to the problems between Caroline and me. The last straw that broke the poor camel's back happened on the first Saturday evening, after Eric had suggested me to do something. Caroline and I had been invited to a pleasant dinner held by friends just outside the town, where she had acted as a loving wife during the whole evening. She did that even the whole way home in the taxi we shared with another couple. Of course, I had a hope of continuing pleasant evening with making love with her. But as soon as the babysitter had left our house, Caroline turned off her pleasant behavior and snubbed me off with, "Forget it if you've been stupid enough to expect something from me tonight." I gave up my efforts and replied with a bright smile. What could I expect from an ice-cold, frigid bitch? Nothing more was said that evening, but it took me several hours before I fell in asleep. I used that time to think out a simple plan. The only thing I had to do was to subscribe to an anonymous service on the web so I could send emails without being traced. After testing the mail service on Sunday, on Monday morning, I sent the following email to Caroline at her job. "Dear Mrs. Ekman, to my great disappointment, I've been told and shown evidence about your cheating, what makes me feel sorry for your husband and envy your lover for his pleasures with such a gorgeous woman as you. Of course, I'm suffering from a strong temptation to share my information with your husband, but I have a better suggestion because I want and need some good times with a gorgeous woman, sponsored by you during my next business trip to the continent. Therefore, I expect you to be seated, alone, at Plaza Cafe at 14:30 to 15 today with €600 in an envelope at the table. My errand woman will greet you by saying, 'Aren't you Lars' sister?' You shall reply, 'No, I'm the wife. Thanks for your very kind cooperation, your real friend.' €600 is a very low amount to be regarded as any serious blackmailing if she went to the police, and they would hardly see it as any high-priority case to save the reputation of a cheating slut wife. On the other hand, it was even low enough for Caroline to fix it without any problems from an ATM. That Monday, I suggested Eric a break for 3 o'clock coffee at Plaza Cafe. We entered there a few minutes before 3, and to my pretended surprise, I saw Caroline sitting alone at a table, and then to my real surprise, I saw Martin Jensen sitting alone a few tables away from her. Even Martin works at the City Hall, and he is married to one of Caroline's best friends. We had met him and his wife at the dinner last Saturday, but I hadn't noted anything special between Caroline and him. Staring at Caroline and Martin, I shouted with a loud voice, "What the hell is going on here? Why are you two here instead of working? Why not share a table?" Martin left without a word to me, and a few minutes later, even Caroline left the cafe. Eric was even more confused than me when I told him that we had probably succeeded in catching Caroline with her lover. After that, I rang Martin's wife, Cecilia, at her job and asked her if she had any idea why my wife and her husband had taken the afternoon off their jobs and were sitting at separate tables at a cafe. Then I told her that I suspected Caroline having an affair, and now Martin had to be the main suspect, unless I got a very good explanation about what they were involved in. She promised to have a serious talk with Martin and give me a call when she knew anything. This Martin was a very good-looking man, usually expensive, dressed, polite, well-mannered, and a real party pleaser. Of course, those of us who had known him since our childhood had a quite different opinion about him. At home, I logged into our bank account where it was visible that €600 had been taken out and inserted back during the day. For the time being, that information was enough for me, why I filled the divorce forms collected at the courthouse during my lunch break. When Caroline came home, she was angry as a bee and snapped at me, "You behaved just like an idiot at the cafe. I can explain everything if you care to listen." I replied, "No, I don't want to listen because I've got enough of you and don't care a shit about your explanation. Just read these divorce papers and sign them. Everything is shared 50-50 and you can't get a better deal, not even with a lawyer that will cost you a fortune." It was visible that she was really angry, very angry indeed, and shouted to me, "Those divorce papers are the only sane thing you have been able to fix in a long time." Boiling of wrath, she signed the divorce forms without reading them and shouted, "It will be a great relief to get a real man instead of a zero like you." So ended my marriage. Caroline went out of the house, and I didn't care where. I got a call from a sobbing Cecilia, who told me that Martin had confessed to having an affair with Caroline. Now he was crying and begging her to forgive him. She said that she didn't know what to do and had demanded Martin go and live with his parents for the next 2 weeks so she got time to think about their future. I told her that Caroline and I had already signed our divorce papers. One thing was for sure, if Caroline regarded Martin as her new dream man, she could forget that, but it wasn't my business to tell her. After the phone call, I moved all of Caroline's clothes to the spare room, which got her furious when she was back home. I couldn't resist the temptation to tell her that I had told Cecilia about what I had seen at Cafe Plaza. That information didn't make her happier. Strange things happened the next day. Back home after our jobs, Caroline surprised me by saying, "Dear Lars, I'm sorry and regret everything that I said in my angry mood yesterday. I was stressed and said silly things I didn't mean. No hard feelings any longer. We are adults and expected to do our best to solve our problems. Please give me those silly divorce papers we signed yesterday in an angry mood, and I promise to be a much better loving wife, and I'll explain everything about yesterday." I looked straight into her eyes when I said, "The divorce papers are at the court, and I already know everything about Marin and your affair. Yesterday evening, after you went out, Martin confessed his cheating to Cecilia, who rang and told me that your real man was a crying wimp begging for mercy and claimed you are a conning slut who had seduced him. Not much for a real man instead of me, is he?" Caroline sobbed and said, "Did Cecilia tell you about Martin and me?" "Yes, and that explains why our marriage has been a loveless marriage for some time. I've suspected your cheating, but found no real evidence until Martin confessed to Cecilia." Caroline got a strange look in face when she said, "But how come that you teased me to sign the divorce papers several hours before Cecilia told you about Martin's confession?" "I had enough during last Saturday night and found out during several sleepless hours that a divorce as soon as possible was my only possible solution. The divorce was decided many hours before the crying creep Martin confessed your cheating. I'm sorry, and wish I could undo everything I did with Martin. Is there any chance you can give me a second chance and forgive me?" "No, because I will never understand how you can prefer that creep Martin to me and dream about him as a real man. I will never forget how you have humiliated me since you fell in love with him. But that pile of crap will be yours when Cecilia is done with him. You probably didn't know that all their inherited shares, savings, expensive house, and cars are Cecilia's private property since Martin had his business. The only thing that Martin owns is a hell of debt since he bankrupted the business. Now, Martin will even lose his expensive Rolex and BMW if those toys impressed on you. If you really love that weeping creep, it will be up to you to support him and his expensive habits. I've made a terrible mistake and will never understand how I could been stupid enough to be seduced and conned by that slimy worm. I'd rather be alone the rest of my life than have anything to do with him." The City Hall gossip said that Martin had told Caroline to take Hike to hell when she had told him about her signed divorce papers and suggested they be an item. That explains why the day after her signing of the divorce documents she begged me to forgive her and cancel the divorce. Martin has been successful in avoiding me since he saw me at the cafe. Already the second day after his confession, a doctor had put him on the sick list for stress and physical problems. Exactly as I had expected, Cecilia filed for divorce after their 2 weeks of timeout, and Martin never returned to his job at the City Hall. After several months on the sick list, he left town for a new job. Caroline and he never met or even talked again. Caroline rented an apartment in a nice area, but had to wait 3 months before she could move in. We agreed that she would stay in our spare room until then, and that none of us would be in dating before our divorce was final. Though it was a chilly atmosphere in the house, the agreement worked better than expected. Then, about 2 months after we had filed for the divorce, something very unexpected happened to Caroline. A Saturday evening, she asked me if I could still promise to keep an important secret about her economic matters. I promised, and she said, "You've probably heard that somebody in our town won a jackpot on Lotto. I'm the winner, not any of the big jackpots, only something equal to about $3 million US, but enough to solve my entire economic problem. We are still married, that is why I have to ask you if you are demanding half of it." "Congratulations. No, I don't demand anything or don't expect anything for myself. My only suggestion is that you set up some kind of funds for the children so they can buy cars, and apartments when they grow up, and thereafter support them if they are going to some higher education, and when they are married." She looked at me and said, "Are you sure that you don't try to demand anything from me?" "Yes, I am. Your love had been enough for me. But I'm sure when Martin gets that information, he will be as burdock in your ass, begging you to forgive his advice about a hike to hell. He will never know, because you are only who will get that information from me, and you promised to keep quiet. Though I didn't keep my own promises to you, I'm convinced that you are better than me and keep what you promised." Nothing further was said in that matter, and everything went on as usual, except that Caroline was out of town the next Thursday and Friday. On Saturday, She asked me if we could have a dinner together because she had something to tell me. I accepted. Our children would stay overnight at one of our friends. The dinner was great with my favorite food and great wine, so I began to expect some attempts to buy my love and was curious about the value of my love in her opinion and how much she was willing to pay for the love. During the delicious dessert, she said, I did exactly as you suggested and created the funds for our children. I replied, You are a good mother, and those funds will be of a great advantage for them when they grow up. Nothing further was said in that matter, but we continued with pleasant small talk about other daily matters. During the coffee and cognac after the meal, when we were seated comfortably in a living room sofa, she said, I'm sorry for being a silly, cheap slut who ruined our happy family by cheating and humiliating the best man I've ever known. Today, it is impossible for me to understand how and why I could fall for Martin's courting and seduction. I regret it as hell and have spent many sleepless nights crying about how damn stupid I've been. Of course, I know for sure that money can't buy your love or not even your forgiveness. However, we know that courts use to sentence a wrongdoer to pay money to their victim as compensation for the caused pain and humiliation. But as no court in this country would care about what I did to you, I took care of the case by myself. I acted as both prosecutor and judge who decided that all lotto money that remained after the funds for our children were put into a personal private account for you. What I've done cannot be undone. She gave me 3 receipts from the bank. I remained in silence for a long time before I said, Good heaven, what have you done? I can't take your money. She replied, You haven't taken anything. The lawyers who fixed it said that it is watertight because there are no conditions of any kind. The money is yours, only yours, and I neither can nor want to regret what I did with it. I don't demand or expect anything in return. I did what I did before I got caught for that stupid cheating. What the hell could I do? My love wasn't for sale, but Caroline hadn't tried to buy any love. No conditions at all. Not any begging about forgiveness. She had only spoken about compensation, not even any attempt to kiss me. Though I was in some kind of shock, I began to understand that her love for me was real. Caroline was a clever, beautiful woman and mother of my children. I suspected, without any doubt, that she still was in love with me. Could I ever find any better woman than her? Probably not. Find any woman equal to her? Not even that. Could I forgive her? I didn't know, but why not give it a serious try? I decided to do that. I said to Caroline, Dear Caroline, we are still married and have to talk with each other. Talk about the past and talk about the future. I think that talking about the future fits better after that delicious dinner, doesn't it? She said yes, and I continued, A divorce hurts as hell, and it hurts even more now, after I have understood how much you really love me and how much you regret your affair. She began to cry and sobbed, I'm praying every night that one day you will forgive me and give me a second chance. I moved closer to Caroline, hugged her and said, We are still married. Shall we do a serious try to remain that? She looked straight into my eyes and whispered, Am I dreaming, or is it true? It is true, because I hope you are equal to my Caroline before she was soiled by Martin. I miss that Caroline as hell. She hugged me hard and whispered, You shall never regret our marriage again. That evening could only end in one way, great intensive lovemaking. During that night, I did everything I could do to give her the very best sex she ever had, and she did the same to me. It was just as the wedding night again, and for a long time after that night we acted as newlyweds. We skipped the divorce. Everything went fine in our relation, and now we are a happy family again. Our children demanded Caroline, and I promised that never a divorce again. We haven't spoken much, about Caroline's affair with Martin. Somehow, I don't really care about any details. Though she gave me all her money, I will never feel that she bought me back because she had no conditions, only a slight hope. She staked everything she had, won what she wanted, and only the future will show her if she did the right thing. The truth is that I missed her so much that I probably had done something by myself to get her back without any money involved. One thing is for sure, I love Caroline and she loves me. As we bring our journey through Lars and Caroline's story to a close, it's clear that the road to forgiveness is not just paved with challenges, but also with opportunities for renewal and deepening bonds. Their story reminds us that love, tested by the fiercest storms, can emerge stronger, more resilient. It's a testament to the enduring power of commitment and the healing grace of forgiveness. Thank you for joining us as we navigated the complexities of a marriage that bent but did not break, foundering on the rocks of betrayal, yet sailing once again on calmer seas. As Lars and Caroline look to the future, they do so with hearts healed and hopes renewed, a reminder to us all that sometimes the hardest battles fought within the confines of the heart can lead to the most profound victories. Remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more stories of love, life, and everything in between. Until next time, keep seeking your truths and turning your trials into triumphs.